Hey, it's Chuck. We are not bemoaning the noon kickoff. We are now owning it. It's a badge of honor. We're the lunatic fringe that defines our coach's legacy when it comes to this game. They don't get to define that outside the family. We're cut from a different cloth for Ohioans. He's got it all, man. He's even got the jaw. You know the jaw. You see that jaw, and you're just like, yeah, man, that's a dude. Do I want Michigan to beat Oklahoma? No way in hell. I don't know what world I'm living in. This is insane to me. And if you saw my outburst, I apologize. It's showtime now. Showtime. It is showtime. Welcome into Buckeye Huddle Primetime. Appreciate you so much for joining me. I'm Chuck. You're on Buckeye Huddle. We are here on Buckeye Huddle Primetime every Monday, Wednesday at 8 p.m. Please do like the show. Please do subscribe to the Buckeye Huddle channel where we are pumping out more videos than anybody else on your beloved Ohio State Buckeyes on a daily basis. And we got a lot going on, guys. A lot going on. A lot of moving pieces, parts. The Buckeyes sign a wide receiver today. That is the big news. That's the good news. I don't got a ton to start the show today because I intend on talking to you guys quite a bit tonight. So didn't prepare a ton of notes, but I do want to get to some things. But we are definitely going to get to your comments. Load them up. If you want me to catch them, make sure you put a question mark at the end, whether it's a question or not, because it stands out to me in a different way. And I want to get your thoughts, because there is certainly a lot going on. People are kind of angry. There are some things that are confusing. There are some contract negotiations that are being rumored about, and we'll discuss it all. But I want to start with, obviously, the portal and the beginning of the portal. The beginning of the portal, when we were walking into this thing, I was looking at the roster, and, we've gone over the numbers, right? Ohio State averages 8 guys in, 17 and a half guys out, which I think a lot of people are surprised when you hear that number, that they average 17 and a half out. And the reason that it doesn't quite hit you is because the majority of the guys that head out are guys like Keenan Nelson, who entered the portal today. Who? Exactly. Keenan Nelson, a guy that the Buckeyes signed out of South Carolina from the portal in the spring portal 2 portals ago, and never did anything. You never heard from him, and now he exits out. And that's what a lot of the exits are. Not so much this year, but I was looking at the roster thinking, where am I going to get these 17 and a half this year? And I couldn't come up with it. And my thought was under. I'm going to take the under this year. Not going to be 17 and a half. And boy, was I wrong, as they've lost some more today. And we're seeing some trends that you don't like if you're a college football fan in general. You certainly don't like if you're a Buckeye fan. And when we look at guys that are in contract negotiations right now, like it's just it's got a whole different feeling to it all. This whole portal class feels way different. And I'm sitting here thinking, man, what if we were in the midst of talking about a game that we had to play, hoping that, we're talking about game prep and matchups, and like all this was going on at the same time. That would be a really, really odd situation, right? It would be really odd to think of the coaching staff going through all this stuff while trying to prepare for a game. Having this portal during the playoffs, like thinking about it last year, would be a huge distraction. But the way it's gone this year, I can't even imagine how they would have been able to concentrate on this with everything going on here. It's the most unbelievable portal class we've seen to date. That's not surprising because they get a little bit seedier every time, but this one is just unbelievable. We're talking about, and I'm just talking about throughout college football, starters on blue blood teams entering the portal. We saw a safety from Georgia today, starting safety. Alabama, a duo of starters on the defensive side of the ball. They're going to go. They're talking about Ohio State, or their agents floating it at any rate, along with 5 other schools that they're going to go visit. And Texas, we talk about freshmen entering the portal. Coming out of the class of 2025, Texas had 2 excellent linebackers, Elijah Barnes, Riley Pettijohn. And Elijah Barnes from Skyline commits to Texas. Riley Pettijohn, he goes up to Ohio State. Elijah Barnes played in 2 games over the course of his freshman year. he's already in the portal. And it's just, it was so predictable with no rules that it was always going to end up this way. But sometimes things got to get worse before they get better. And the college football bigwigs, the lack of leadership, the half measure. They did the half measure. They thought they could do the half measure and get away with it. The half measure being the House settlement and not going to full-on collective bargaining. So they tried the half measure, the House settlement, and they passed the House settlement. We've never seen it worse since they passed the House settlement. And it's just unbelievable what we've seen from players. And I don't blame them because the money's gotten so big. But it started off, guys had what you would think they always had back in the day. You got some humility, you got some pride, and we would see it from the recruits and we'd see it from the guys that entered the transfer portal. Like, they did it sheepishly. You know what I mean? There was not, it was kind of on the down low. You didn't want to admit really that you were signing with the team that had the highest offer. It was about other things. You know, there was an illusion of it. It's more wholesome really, right? But let's be honest, it was never that. That was an illusion. And when those walls got broken down and things got normalized, now there is absolutely no, like, I have loyalty to my coach, loyalty to this program that brought me in and invested this time recruiting me, invested this year in me. No, I want more money or I'm leaving. And that's because the money got too big, too fast. And now you got these vultures, agents who are not real agents, who can charge whatever they want, 20% commission, getting over on families and kids that really don't have any idea what they're doing. And that's why they hire an agent. The NFL agents make a fraction of what these kids are making, or these agents to these kids are making. And these guys are advising them in a lot of ways to get the most money, to maximize the most money that they can out of their college eligibility. And in a lot of cases, it's working for them. They're maximizing their earning power in college. They're certainly not maximizing their development in a lot of these cases. And that's clear, unless you think it's better to pull a chip, train them, and play 4 years of college football at 4 different colleges. Each one successively going down a rank in college, because that happens quite a bit. We see a lot more guys leave where they're at and drop slightly down a level than go up a level. But what we're watching isn't sustainable. It's not sustainable. It's a house of cards. It's all going to come crumbling down. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take. It's a matter of how long the college administrators at the top are going to deal with this before they bite the bullet and say, all right, we need to come back to the table. It's clear that the House settlement and the revenue sharing and the CSC, none of that's going to work, man. None of that is going to work at all. And as we come more and more to the realization that unless something changes, us as Ohio State fans, I mean, this is stuff we're no longer immune to. I mean, Ohio State was able to culturally, because it was so strong, maintain that loyalty, that's pride, that's shame, not wanting to do things like, we're just going to, hey man, it's my freshman year, I'm done with it, you're going to pay me more or I'm out. Like, there was shame to that, and they wouldn't do it. But it was happening elsewhere, and now it's arrived at Ohio State as well, because the money always going to win out when it gets so big, and it has gotten so big. And the schools have no leverage in these money talks, very, very little leverage. In the House settlement, no enforcement wing currently operating. The CSC, that's the College Sports Commission, that is the House settlement enforcement wing. It has 4 full-time employees, and they still don't have the punishments published because they're still not ironed out. That's right. They rolled out this House settlement with the enforcement wing not ready to go. And Ohio State, maybe the premier institution in the country that threw its weight behind this thing, and Ross Bjork essentially being the biggest athletic director to throw all his support behind this thing, they're not looking so sharp right now. Not doing great with the public relations that Ohio State is like the face of this thing. They had no reason to do that. They did it anyway. They, of course, had reason to want it to work because the traditional way of college football, very advantageous to the blue bloods of college football. The new way, it's very advantageous to those who spend the most money. And we're going to have a lot of conversations here in the next, months and years about Ohio State's willingness or reluctance to spend money, its cash reserves, donor fatigue, the lack of a billionaire donor. Can't believe that's part of the conversation, but it's actually an enormous part of the conversation. Because if this continues to go on unchecked, there will be a reshuffling of the deck as to who the powers in the sport are. Because it just doesn't stay like this until there's collective bargaining agreement. Like, things are going to keep changing. Things are going to keep on changing more and more. And what we've always held on to is the things that separate Ohio State will continue to mean less and less. And that's the way it's going to be. That's the way it's going to be if things don't change. Now, you can still weather the storm and you can still win this battle by being smart, out coaching, stocking your roster by using a lot of money or excellent evaluations and somehow keeping those excellent evaluations and developing them while getting them to stick around. But the advantage that Ohio State once had, as well as the other blue blood programs, used to be pretty wide, and now it's very, very minimal. And here's a perfect example. Remember the recruitment of Coy Parrish? Maybe not. Coy, towards the end of the class 2 years ago, people start to recognize how awesome this guy is. And this dude is a safety out of Minnesota and plays both ways. Man, his film was amazing. And Ohio State has it down to Minnesota, either stay home with Minnesota or go to Ohio State and play football at Ohio State, get developed. You got the tradition, you got the NFL, you got the opportunity to compete on the big stage. And Coy Parrish elects to stay home and go to Minnesota. And I got no problem with a hometown kid staying home. It was a bummer. I really wanted him. But the first time around, he stayed home. Now, the second time he has the decision, he enters the portal. And Ohio State, of course, they would like to get their name in the ring to get back. Why not? They finished second for him. They could use a safety. Coy Parrish goes to Texas Tech. And that's just an example of one guy and how you can see this, just one individual. This is what meant things that were important to him 2 years ago when he was 18. And now at 20, when he goes into the portal, instead of this blue blood that really wants him, that he really respects, it's Texas Tech where he ends up, where they're paying NFL contracts to college kids. What Ohio State has to offer doesn't trump that. It did when we were talking the difference of maybe it's $300,000 versus $420,000. That was different. The things Ohio State had to offer and the things Ohio State could sell made it even. It equaled that playing field. But the numbers, when you've got a billionaire just chucking money around, become astronomically different. And then it's not a competition. Then it's, I do appreciate those things about Ohio State, but I'm sorry, man, you're not even the ballpark. You know what I mean? And that's not going to work long term. But we did get an addition today. We did get a couple of additions now since this portal's open. So let's start by talking about them. And we will start by talking about Will Kazmarek, who in the transfer portal class of 2024, Ohio State brought in from Ohio University. First year, plays pretty good. Second year, this last year, this season, I guess it's still in the season, right? He played fantastic. He was great. And Ohio State double dips back down to Ohio University and brings in Mason Williams. Mason Williams, I don't know, he's like the 45th ranked tight end. I don't care. I watched his film. You know what he looks like? Looks like he could be a potential Will Kazmarek. And you know what I love on my team? a Will Kazmarek. You know what I don't love? I don't love recruiting 5-star tight ends in this age when the price tag on a 5-star tight end just as much as a 5-star anywhere else, because I don't want a 5-star tight end if it means I don't get one elsewhere. Or I don't want a 5-star tight end if it means I don't have money in the portal to go get a piece that is needed to replace somebody that just left in the portal. I can live without certain positions being loaded, and tight end is one of them. I also saw what it looks like when Ohio State has 5 tight ends that they think can play football. Saw that this year. They jam them all on the field at once, and I didn't like it. Did not like it at all. Do like Mason Williams, a kid from Mogador right down the street from me. So go Cats. Good one there. Then you get the big dog right now, the Tier 1A prospect. Now, we talk about how many Tier 1As can Ohio State afford in this particular class. How many? And I see your questions, guys. I'll get to those, I promise. How many Tier 1A guys? 3 or 4, and this will be our first one. John Walker out of UCF, a guy who's played for 2 years at UCF, who was a top 100 kid out of high school, who Ohio State was in on, kid from Kissimmee, Florida, who had 5 official visits. 4 of them were Ohio State and schools like Ohio State. The 5th was UCF, and he became the highest commit in UCF history, and he was just too shy to leave. He was too shy to leave home. He was very shy in his Ohio State visit, didn't want to leave his hotel room, and now he's all grown up. 2 years of very good football at UCF, including 28 tackles from the nose last year at 6'4", 320 pounds with a 6'10" wingspan. The guy's making tackles like K-Mac, not to that degree. Nobody does. He's in a league of his own. 58 tackles for K-Mac this year, but 20 plus tackles from the nose is a lot. He's a big, strong kid, man. Smart, like him a lot. So a perfect signing for the Buckeyes there, and they really needed another nose to match up with our guy, Will Smith Jr., who also had a really great year, but is not a guy that is going to be able to get you 45 snaps. I don't think that. I mean, it's not ideal. So being able to bring him in, I think, was absolutely where I would have looked to put Tier 1A dollars in that spot right there. Now, you got a couple of special teams additions as well, not a kicker. We'll talk about that when it comes. You did miss out on a kicker. Wasn't happy about it. Was not happy. The Buckeyes' first kicker that they were in on was excellent. He was the best one in the portal from Illinois, kicking in windy Illinois. And this is a guy who was like 38 of 43 over his career at Illinois, including this past season, a walk-off against Tennessee and USC. So clutch walk-off kicks, exactly what you would think Ryan Day would be after. And this guy ends up going to visit Texas A&M, and Texas A&M pulls the old, we're not letting you walk out of here until you sign that piece of paper. What's it going to take? Now, I've heard it took $250,000. I don't think that's crazy for a kicker. I think that if that kicker is the difference in one game, what's an Ohio State victory worth? I don't know. It's worth a lot of money. I know that. What's an Ohio State playoff victory worth? Wow. A whole lot of money. And what is a loss worth to not have? What's a loss worth? I bet Ryan Day would pay that out of his pocket if he knew that would save him one loss. And it's a guy who's lost games on a kicker. So now we do got another one. We do got a kicker, the kicker out of Pitt, and there's quite a few prospects out of Pitt that have been pretty interesting. The Pitt kicker entering the portal, and we know that whatever they call Heinz Field now is a tough place to kick. We all know that, and a lot of us fans of the AFC North here, tough spot, and that kid's been pretty damn good. But let's go over the addition that broke this afternoon, and that is new wide receiver coach Hankton Cortez Hankton. Mix this guy's name up backwards and frontwards like 5 times now. He has not had a good week, right? The wide receiver room that he's working with looks quite different now than it did when he was interviewing for the job, but he probably expected there would be some attrition. Luckily for him, he had a good relationship with Chris Henry Jr. as he recruited him and was able to kind of get LSU in the door there. But the Buckeyes bring in a wide receiver in Devin McEwen out of UTSA. That's Texas San Antonio. And he will join the Buckeyes. And this is a guy with 1 year of eligibility left. So he's an older, experienced guy, which is what you need in this wide receiver room. It's very young. 6'1", 195, originally out of Jacksonville. And this past year, 65 receptions, 720 yards, 8 touchdowns. But in 2023 and in 2024, he had over 40 receptions both years. So he's a guy not only has played 3 years of college football, but produced 3 years of college football, gotten better each year. The 87th ranked wide receiver in the portal. That's just not accurate. I mean, it's just not. It just isn't. There can't be 86. I watched this guy's film. There can't be 86 better than him. There just can't be. Against a couple of the big dogs he played against Texas A&M, he had 6 receptions. Against Tulane, 8 receptions. Now, he is a guy that I've seen reports floating around. He ran a 10.28 100 meter. That would be as fast as Jameer Brown. Now, when you watch a guy that fast on film, it jumps out, right? Whether he's playing in the Big Ten, the SEC, or the NFL, it jumps out off the screen. I watched him. He's not that. Maybe if he is on the track, it's not football speed. He's not that kind of fast, but he's fast, and he's got good hands. And there's a clip of him high pointing a nice ball. There's a nice over-the-shoulder catch. The guy looks pretty complete. He's a pretty doggone complete wide receiver. And when we look at the blueprint, right, that we see some of these schools that are better at restocking with the portal than Ohio State, this is kind of the blueprint. They want guys with 3 years of production, 4th year or 5th year seniors who have gotten better every year. And this guy fits the mold. And we didn't even get to hear him in the interviews, right? Maybe he blew him away in that part too. And that's pretty exciting when you add all that together. Now, he's not a Mylan Graham type of athlete. He's not a Quincy Porter type of prospect, but he's a guy who's done it in college football. For whatever that means, I know some people are not going to be happy because, lower level ball, it doesn't got the measurables that those guys have. I get it, but maybe it's time to give it a chance. And we've had a lot of Ohio State teams with fantastic wide receiver rooms, and there's been a lot of years where it hasn't done Ohio State much good. So what if you just have JJ and some complementary pieces? Might that just be good enough? Now, you still are really young in the wide receiver room, and I'll pull up the room here. This is what it looks like now. Oh, geez, never mind. This is my old pick. This one's still got Chris Henry Jr. and Quincy Porter over there on the left. But you can see without Quincy Porter, Jeremiah, Brandon Inniss, Chris Henry Jr., and now you add in our buddy Devin McEwen. And when we look below that starting crew, you got Phillip Bell. He'll be in year 2. Brock Boyd, that's a true freshman. Des Jones, that is a year 2. Jaden Ricketts, a true freshman. Underneath Quincy Porter and Chris Henry Jr. over there at Z, that's going to look like Chris Henry Jr. or Devin McEwen, then Brock Boyd, Quaden Guilford, couple of true freshmen, and then Bodpin Miller, who's in year 2, and BP, not going to be someone who contributes this year either. So where does McEwen play? Is he a guy that is going to for sure play Z across from JJ? I think so. But boy, does he got a skill set that looks like he could be a really explosive slot receiver. So if Ohio State were able to bring in another, and I'm imagining they're working on bringing in another, maybe we see one of them potentially work in the slot and maybe, work some snaps away from Brandon Inniss. Not so sure. But didn't cost a ton, followed the blueprint of the good portal schools, and I think that's a good thing. Now, after losing the 2-year guys that we saw early in the week, right, with Mylan with Bryce West, with Aaron Scott. You lose those 2-year guys, and then we get the bombshell about Quincy Porter, which to me, and we'll talk a little bit more about Quincy, that was just a bombshell because he's a freshman, right? Just finished his freshman year. And the other day, I was talking to Isaiah West, freshman running back's mom, because she had commented about Maxwell Roy, who is Isaiah's good buddy. They went to high school together at Philadelphia St. Joe's. And Maxwell, class of 2025, just finishes his freshman year. He was injured his senior year of high school, injured again this year at Ohio State. Stud wrestler. Now, I was never too high on him from the beginning. I felt the same way about Trajan Odom. I kind of thought those were kind of just, those were numbers. You didn't get your target guys, and they're fine. But I did think with 4 years of tutelage, there was the potential there to be really similar to a Ty Hamilton. Like that was there. That was in him. And it still is. It just won't be at Ohio State, as he is heading out, and he became the second guy in the class of 2025, joining Quincy Porter, heading out. But it wasn't just him. As another guy who just finished his freshman season heads out today, and that is Javon McFadden, offensive guard out of Maryland, who was a low-level blue chipper guy, and it was Justin Fry's third and final offensive lineman in the class of 2025 after Carter Lowe, then Jake Cook, the two Ohio kids. They'll stay, hopefully. McFadden out of Maryland, and they beat Colorado for him in the end. And when I was at practice before the season started, Javon McFadden was going up in one-on-one drills against Caden McDonald, and Caden was coming, and McFadden, out of like 5 reps, stonewalled Caden McDonald 2 times. And I was jumping up and down. Are you kidding me? I called my buddy Ron James over, told him all about it, and I was all excited. Excited for Javon McFadden. Thought that he would be someone who would be a great addition here at some point after a couple of years. And just like that, gone. Freshman year, gone. And then you got the Quincy Porter situation, and I want to talk about this one because I've seen a lot of people talking about this one and saying that it proves a specific point. Now, Quincy Porter came into Ohio State between Jeremiah Smith and Chris Henry Jr., right? We kind of equate this to quarterback Luke Fahey, who's going to be between Tavian St. Clair and Brady Edmonds, right? Except actually that's a horrible comparison. Never mind. Forget I said that. So Quincy Porter comes in between Jeremiah Smith and Chris Henry Jr. And when we talk about the final 3 that were in on Quincy Porter, it was Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State. Now, why do I bring them up? He was a late bloomer who didn't get his 5th star till real late. And you got 3 schools there that sometimes they'll go high in bidding wars. Not really Penn State, but Ohio State and Michigan will, if somebody drives up the price, but nobody did. And the final deal that he committed to Ohio State with was relatively low for a 6'3" X 5-star wide receiver. And then we see Chris Henry Jr., and we see what happens with Chris Henry Jr. Now, Quincy Porter's agent, Latish Kinsler, represents a lot of the New Jersey guys. He represents incoming freshman Jordan Thomas, the cornerback. And these agents all talk to each other, and Kinsler knows exactly what Chris Henry Jr. is getting from Ohio State. So now you got this situation where you've got Quincy sandwiched between these 2 other 5-stars, and Quincy, obviously he and his agent know he's not JJ value. He's not seen as that kind of prospect, not going to get that kind of money when he comes in. And then he spends a year in the program and decides he wants to come back to Ohio State and say, okay, listen, we're okay with coming in making less than what JJ did when he was coming in. But Quincy's a 5-star wide receiver, 6'3" X, who just proved to you all year behind the scenes that he was a hard worker. And now you're bringing in this new 5-star wide receiver, X, making twice the amount of money. We want twice the cash here. And Ohio State's response was, buddy, you were okay making this money last year. You didn't do anything to earn a raise, so you should be okay this year. And he says, peace out. Now, some people are saying This is why you can never pay another guy more money coming in as a freshman than the guy you already got in the room. Ruins the culture. That's incorrect. Ohio State knew all along that they were going to be paying Chris Henry Jr. more money at the risk of losing Quincy Porter. And if that was something that bothered them, they would not have taken that calculated risk. Because at this point, Quincy Porter and Chris Henry Jr. are both still prospects. Quincy didn't show you anything. Had he, might have been a different story. But they knew that they risked losing Quincy Porter by paying Chris Henry Jr. that money. They wanted Chris more. And that's why they did that. Sure, they'd have loved to keep them both, but there wasn't enough money for both. So they paid the guy the most money that they believed in the most. And that's the guy you still got on the roster. So that's great. Now, I was thinking about making this a little bit of a different example earlier, and I was writing down some notes when I was coming up with the show. Now, David Gabriel George is the best running back in the country, right? He's in the class of 2026, and he's going to command a ton of money, and Ohio State is in his top 2 right now. Now, let's say that David Gabriel George is a guy who, coming out of high school, would be commanding more money than Bo Jackson, a guy who just ran for 1,000 yards as a true freshman, one of just 5 guys ever. Now, you know how I feel about Bo. Love Bo. I was in on Bo, and people were saying James Peoples was J.K. Dobbins, and I said, absolutely not. Bo Jackson is clearly more talented, and he will be eating into his snaps. And that's what happened with Bo. And I pounded the table for him. Love him. Great kid. But David Gabriel George, those frustrating runs you see out of Bo where it looks like Bo is, God, you almost had it. And those kind of added up, didn't they? David Gabriel George is a guy that I believe will make those extras. He'll bust off those that Bo just almost gets it. That's what I think. Now, if you're in a situation like that, what do you do? What do you do? The prospect costs more. Then you got the guy that just showed you he could do this, but the prospect looks like he could maybe be a little more. What do you do in that situation? I don't know. As it turns out, you're not going to have to figure it out. You're not going to have to figure it out because Bo's going to make sure if Bo's at Ohio State, by the time you get an opportunity to make a deal to David Gabriel George, there's no way he's going to be getting more than Bo. No way. Now, Bo is obviously one of the best freshman running backs. Let me put it this way. He's had one of the best statistical seasons of a freshman running back in Ohio State history. The reason he's one of just 5 who has 1,000 yards in Ohio State history is because of the circumstance. Because Tony Alford kind of missed a couple classes in a row, and they brought in a transfer in CJ Donaldson, who was not what they thought he was. And that opened up opportunity to Bo. It was opportunity, and he seized the moment. Both of those things. If we're just talking just strictly talent, no, I don't have him in top 5 as a freshman. But Bo wants more money. And, there are people who look at the dollar amount and say, well, yeah, Bo absolutely deserves more money. He outperformed what they were paying him. How much more? We talk about this sport, and everybody knows it's the second most popular sport in the country, right? Second most popular sport in the country. And there is no salary cap, effectively. There's no real salary cap, right? And people are so taken aback that these dudes are asking for money that look like what Travion Henderson got paid last year in the NFL, or this year in the NFL for the Patriots. And the truth is, that's what they're getting. It's what they're getting. They're getting paid, in a lot of cases, NFL-style contracts. If it's what you're getting, of course you're going to ask for it, particularly when it's a very light market. And if you are a not so, or I mean, if you're a good agent and you know what's out there on the market and you know you can get your guy that, well, yeah. If you don't care about trying to be a team player to your organization, you're going to try to get whatever you want, whatever you can. Now, what's it going to be? What's it going to be with Bo and Ohio State? Did they work it out? Because what do we know Ohio State's philosophy is? Ohio State's philosophy is they're going to pay to retain guys before they go get outside guys. And they're not going to go get that big time portal back. They're not going to go get that Savion Hyder because they're going to retain what they have. And they're not going to bring in a more expensive guy off the street. Well, what's the answer now with Bo? Are you going to not pay him too and not pay Savion Hyder and not get a top tier portal back? Somebody's got to get paid, right? Or is it just going to be no? Nobody's going to get paid. We're going the budget route for a running back. And this is the part where fans start to get really irritated because people sit and talk and say this is the Ohio State philosophy. During the recruiting cycle, they're not going to pay top tier for this guy, just a couple of guys. They're going to pay to retain. And then you're talking about a starter on the team who has earned more than he got paid his freshman year. And you better make the deal work because if he walks at this point, Jaden Ball's not leaving Florida anymore. That's over. Hollywood Smothers, he's going to Bama. Isaac Brown re-signed at Louisville. And now, like, the big targets, the running backs that could have potentially replaced him, they're off the board. And your freshman running back class includes Favor Akey and maybe Legend if you want to try to run him. It's not going to work right off the rip. I mean, he's not a running back. You'd have to learn the position. Certainly not going to help you much when it comes to blocking. Favor's not quite there yet, coming off injury. It's going to be Isaiah West, and then you're going to have to pull in, some parts out of the portal, but nothing that's going to be anything like what you had this year. So what's it going to be? And I keep trying to keep as chill as I can when we talk about all this circumstance, right? We just watched Ohio State play the long play in the recruiting class, and they ended up coming out very good in the end. Portal still open till the 16th, and deals will be done further than the 16th, right? That's just the date that guys have to be in by. We saw him sign one tier 1A guy in John Walker, and that's great. But I think what a lot of fans were expecting was when this season ended in massive disappointment with a catapult of an ejection from the playoffs, losing your last two games, getting out coached with a ton of your guys leaving to the NFL and a ton of youth on the team. I think what a lot of people were expecting was a portal class similar to what you saw after the 2023 season, when you went and got your future national championship winning quarterback and your future starting quarterback and the best running back in the portal and the future best center in the portal and a 2-year starting tight end and the best safety in college football. When you went and did all that and you did it with urgency, this does not feel like that. And in addition, you didn't lose 3 5-stars out of the program. It just doesn't feel anything like that at all. Feels like you're slipping backwards, even more so. So let's hope that it's not a total lack of direction when it comes to the spending of the money from the athletic director. That is, you remember, he was brought in, and the big thing was he was an ace fundraiser. That was his thing. He was the guy to lead Ohio State into and through the NIL era, and an ace fundraiser. That was what was spread about him. That was the goods on him. No, he doesn't have a great record. He got fired by Ole Miss and Texas A&M, but this is what he's really good at, right? That was what they said. Well, let's hope he can get it together quickly, because things move fast, man. Kay and Lee, the nickel that's from Auburn that we all thought, all right, well, you get this guy at nickel and he comes in and visits. Well, no, today it breaks. He signs at Tennessee. He came up and visited. And like we've seen so many of these other programs do, guy comes up and visits, shut it down. You're not leaving. You're signing right here. And Tennessee, the wide receiver they wanted from Old Dominion goes to visit LSU first. LSU doesn't let him out of the office. And when it comes to Ohio State and it comes to, operating like this, they've got to start getting better when it comes to this portal stuff, man, because it feels like they're not near as good as these other folks are. Not near as good. And it's true that they don't have a billionaire, but there are a lot of options, and they haven't added a ton of guys at this point. So anyway, that's where I'm at with everything as I've seen the last few days unfold. Now, let me go and see what you guys have to say, starting with our buddy New York Buck with a $50 super chat. You're too kind. Too kind. Since Deloitte is not saying anything about fair market value for any of these players, why are we even playing by these rules? Bjork is unbelievably naive to think that the CSC beats the Sherman Act. I say we start acting like Texas Tech and USC. Well, what New York Buck is talking about when he says Deloitte, that is the program that runs the clearinghouse NIL Go. And they essentially, there's a massive workaround in the House settlement. And I'm going to do a show on this, a 15-minute show. I've found a way to break this down concisely. So if anybody does not know exactly how this is supposed to run, I busted it down. I had to do it 3 times because I was like, nah, it's not quite as concise enough. So it's a 15-minute show, how this is supposed to run under the new rules versus what is actually happening versus how Ohio State has gone about it. There's a big loophole, New York Buck. There's a big loophole. My opinion, Ohio State really backed themselves into a corner by being essentially the face of the big schools for this thing. So if they were to pivot off of that, well, you look awfully silly, don't you? Like everybody could, wait a minute. These guys were just out here saying everybody wanted this. I don't know why we can't back away from this after 3 months. And when we talk about naivete, yeah. When Ross continued to say over and over again when talking about this, everybody said they wanted this. Of course they did. They wanted it for you, and they wanted it for that guy, and they wanted it for this guy. Nobody wants it for themselves. Everybody wants rules for thee and not for me. Of course they said. And then when nobody's looking or when they can get away with it, they're going to do something else. But we know that there are plenty of programs that are not operating under the rules, the expected rules of this settlement. And we know that there are many that are exploiting the loophole, which is known to everybody. Ohio State was not exploiting the loophole. I don't know if they're planning on it, but there was a contract that just got leaked from Auburn or from LSU. And, essentially I've talked about this forever. It just makes me so mad because the CSC would not fight back with the House lawyers about this. And it had to do with the collectives operating as a business, which a collective is not a business. Their sole intent is to funnel money to players, not make money, not turn a profit. That's what a business does. If my sole intent is not to turn a profit, but to funnel money to somebody, well, I can do any kind of business activity I want, such as host a coaching clinic, right? And I can have 20 kids come to the coaching clinic, and I can have 85 kids on my roster that I pay each $6,000 to be there. Well, I'm going to lose my butt financially, right? No, I'm going to win because my whole job is just for you to approve the $6,000. I've already got the money to pay them. I'm just funneling it to them. So that's the big loophole that was open. And they found a big contract that LSU wrote for Brendan Sorsby, the quarterback who signed with Texas Tech. And essentially they guaranteed him $3.5 million that they're going to piecemeal off in little crappy deals, such as like I just explained, that gets it through the clearinghouse, right? That's if they even intend to do that, to use the clearinghouse or turn the deal in. But that's what the contract said that got leaked to the media. And it's just a total bunch of hogwash at this point. Like I said, the CSC has 4 full-time employees. That is the entire enforcement wing of this thing. 4 employees. The rules, you want to know what the punishments are? You can't. You can't. They're not complete. You can't find what those are. There's an outline, but they're not complete. It's absurd. It's totally absurd. It wasn't ready. They rolled it out anyway. And so far as I know, there's been nobody who's followed this thing to the letter of the law like Ohio State. Now, will they have followed it in the end when we're all said and done here with this final portal? Because we've now seen the recruiting class, we've seen the retention portion, now we will have seen the portal. And we'll be able to tell at the end of this, okay, did they stick to the word that they were going to follow this to the letter of the law, or maybe a little fudging? We'll be able to tell. We'll be able to tell at minimum if they were using the loophole. No doubt about that. But I appreciate your comment, buddy, and really appreciate the super chat. Ethan said, let the outcome of the games determine your emotions, not this silly BS. Where do you think Drew Aller gets drafted? Man, that's a great question, dude. That is a great question. You know, I was under the impression that he was going to show out this year and end up being a first rounder. He's got a really great arm, but at this point, I feel like he's such damaged goods. I'm not good at this, though. I'll preface it by saying that, but I'm going to say middle of the second round. A Penn Stater. I want to know about trouble in Buckeye land. Juck has great coverage. Another Buckeye leaves. Shaking my head. Oh, he's came in to rub salt in the wound. Yeah. Hey, man. Things aren't going fantastic, but I mean, it could be worse. We could be starting all over with a new coach. Though I like your coach. I like Matt Campbell. I'm a Matt Campbell guy. I did see that Matt Campbell is bringing in like 19 Iowa State homies. How do we feel about that? I bet most Penn Staters are saying, hey, Signetti just did it with a bunch of James Madison kids. Juck got those. I snorted some pre-workout highs right now. Oh, man. Yeah. It's been a trying day, dude. CD Superman thinks Chaz is worth it in a Patricia defense. Yeah, not sounding good for Chaz, guys. Not sounding good. Richie says, Alabama paying Smothers and AK Deer. Why are we not paying him? I'll tell you what, man. The Smothers is so good. That would be fantastic. That would have been a great pickup. Some of the stuff, I don't know, man. It's like you just wish you knew. Like, can I just let me see the books here? Let me see what we're working with. Because it's like you don't know how critical you can be because you don't know what you're working with, right? There's a lot of programs working with way more money. We can assume that. When it comes to the settlement, we can also assume that, yes, they are trying to play by the rules of the settlement. And you can appreciate that because they put themselves in the situation where they kind of had to. But at some point, what I know is Ohio State will pivot if they're abiding by that. Like, they're not going to do that forever while nobody else is. Like, that won't happen. But giving it the old college try for a year, yeah, I could see that happening. Like I said, we'll know for sure, I think, at the end here. Bo wants more than Baugh. That's not going to happen. Pay up and get both. That's not going to happen either. Mark Cuban most likely bought Indiana, Marsh and Hoover. Crazy times. Yeah. And he's proud about donating to Indiana for football. And I always used to be of the opinion that, look, Ohio State with amount of alumni and the amount of how big the fan base is, put out the bat signal, man. The money will be there. And it turns out really what it takes is one of these guys can just do so much more than a collective strategy. You know what I mean? Recruiting high school kids and developing at one school is over, and now that's how the portal is now. Yeah, I think we're going to see a different strategy. I think we're going to see you're going to go after and you're going to spend on the top portion of your class, the can't miss guys, right? You're going to go spend a lot of money on them, and you're going to add in after that a bunch of guys that look like the current bottom 10 guys in the class. What you're not going to do is spend those $200,000 and $300,000 contracts on the mid-range 4-stars. Like, they're all gone. They're not being recruited anymore. It's the top tier guys that you think could potentially play as freshmen, better be playing as sophomores. And then the developmental guys that you want hanging around in the program, and a couple of them will blossom. Like, that's, to me, what the strategy is moving forward. Wait, Miami has fans. Do they go to league games at home? Oh my gosh, don't start, man. They'll come. They came for me, buddy. They were out in full force and they wanted to get their pound of flesh after they won. Is Wilson from Missouri still available? Rather pay him than Chaz. I mean, it's a very good argument. Yes, he is. Back in the portal. And, the thing about Damon is it is a clear money grab to me. Like, he wants to get another payday. Left Georgia, went to Mizzou, got a payday, earned it, 9 sacks on the year. And that's a veteran guy who's proven it now, got the production. And here's why I'm in agreement with you that I do like it more than Chaz, because Chaz is going to be what we are seeing. I don't know if you've seen the graphics that these schools are putting out, that they re-signed their guy, right? So you signed Chaz for 2026. You need to sign Chaz again for 2027. And if Chaz has a good 2026 at 1.5, 2027, you got first option, right? Right of first refusal, most likely to sign him to a bigger one in 2027. And it's very possible that Chaz pops off and has a massive one in 26. But I would think 27 is going to be his biggest year. What I know is that Damon Wilson could come in, just got 1 year left, older, more physically mature, got more tricks now. Chaz didn't play a ton last year. Like, as a player, Chaz blows him away long term. But if we're just talking 2026, that money's better invested in Damon Wilson, in my book. So I agree with you there. Richie says, brother, LBJ doesn't even tip waiters and waitresses. Can confirm. So I'm in the restaurant business from Akron, Ohio. LeBron, since he was, 9 years old, has been eating at my family's restaurants. And when he was, became of age, and then he was an NBA pro, the girls used to get so excited to wait on him and so disappointed when it was over. Yeah, can confirm. Miami churning butter while it was OSU waiting for Larry Coker to call and give Tressel a tour and recipe to build a championship program. Coker didn't think he could meet that snake in the title game. Ohio State needs to hire a coach that just works with kickers. How about you just get a better kicker? Or you get one of those, what do they call them? The mental coach guys. Juicy Bellamy, thanks for the super chat, buddy. Isn't Cortex the wide receiver coach who trained the girl at LSU with the coaches and the player Kashan Bude? The wide receiver who trained the girl at LSU. Yeah, I'm not sure, bro. I'm not sure about that. Imagine if Ryan Day just said screw it and went to the NFL. I mean, at this point, would that be crazy to you? It wouldn't be crazy to me. It's like you've got all these plans. You think every year he just gets this new wrench thrown in. It just is like, man, this is ridiculous. This is just ridiculous. So, anyway, guys, I do appreciate you joining me here at Buckeye Huddle on a Buckeye Huddle prime time at 8 p.m. every Monday and Wednesday, where we hang out every night on Monday and Wednesday. But I am gonna go eat some dinner and call it a night. You know, a lot of stuff to talk about. Hopefully, the next time we get back together, there is better news to talk about. I'm sure there will be. It can't get much worse than this. You know what I mean? You know what I mean, guys? Right? Is that right? All right. I'll talk to you soon. Have a good one. Please like,